Trouble never arrived shouting on the high plains. Jeb Callahan had learned that truth long before his beard turned salt-colored and the leather of his hat grew weather-scuffed. Trouble came quiet, soft as dust lifting in a breeze, sharp as a shadow where none should be. And trouble found him on a wind-bleached morning when he spotted a young Apache woman collapsed near his horse corral. At first, he thought she might be injured from a fall. But as he rushed toward her, he saw the torn edges on her buckskin dress, the scratches trailing along her arms, and the way her breath fluttered shallow, as if every inhale carried pain. She looked as though she had run through night itself, through thorns, panic, and fire, until her legs simply quit beneath her. Jeb knelt beside her without hesitation. He lifted her carefully, feeling how light she was and how tense her muscles remained even in unconsciousness. Inside the cabin, he laid her on his small cot and sat on the floor near her, waiting, watching, giving her space yet ready to steady her if she bolted awake afraid. When she did wake, the panic arrived instantly, alive in her dark eyes, bright as sparks in dry grass. She pushed herself up fast, speaking in Apache and scrambling backward until her shoulders hit the wall. Jeb lifted both hands, palms open. "Easy," he murmured, voice low. "Ain't here to harm you." She stared at him a long moment before whispering a name. "Nia." Her voice trembled, the sound of someone whose world had cracked open overnight. Slowly, in broken pieces of English mixed with Apache, she told him what had happened. Outlaws had raided her people's temporary camp. They stole what they could carry, blankets, saddlebags, tools, food. But they also stole something sacred. Something her people trusted her to protect. Jeb didn't ask for details. Some things didn't need explanations to be understood. Fear like the one shaking her voice only came when something mattered beyond measure. He gave her water. Bread. A blanket. But Nia refused to stay inside. She kept glancing at the fields, toward the open country like she expected shadows to rise from it. When she gathered enough strength, she pushed herself to her feet and stepped outside. Jeb followed close behind, not to corral her, but because he feared she'd collapse again. The ranch seemed foreign to her. She touched the weather-worn boards of the barn with careful fingertips and studied the horses with a mix of curiosity and unease. Her small frame carried a presence far bigger than her size, fierce, quiet, sharpened by hardship. She stepped onto a low cart by the haystack to look beyond the fields. But the wooden board shifted under her foot, and she lost balance. She fell backward, right into Jeb, who had stepped close to steady her. They stumbled onto the hay, Jeb sitting hard while she landed on his lap, stunned. Nia froze, breath tight as bowstring. Jeb didn't move. He kept his hands at his sides, afraid even a gentle touch might send her running. "Easy," he said again. "Just sit still a second." She shifted, trying to stand, only for her knee to press into something behind her. A small wooden box Jeb had forgotten he left there. The box jammed upward, striking Jeb in the ribs so sharply he hissed through his teeth. "It's just a box," he muttered, wincing. "Just sit a second, I can't breathe yet." Nia jerked upward in alarm, her body reacting before thought. She'd been chased once already, every jolt felt like danger. But when she looked at him, really looked, she saw pain, not threat. She slid off him quickly, steadying herself against the hay bale. Jeb pressed a palm to his ribs with a groan. "I ain't trying to scare you," he said. "Just got myself winded, that's all." Nia's gaze drifted to the little box. Something in her expression changed. "They took something like this." "A box?" Jeb asked. She shook her head. "The one. A chest. It holds the words of my people." The reverence in her voice pulled every bit of Jeb's attention. He didn't pretend to understand the full meaning, but he knew sacred when he heard it. "If they stole something that matters," he said quietly, "I can help you get it back." Nia watched him, her eyes measuring him the way riders judged a horse they weren't sure they could trust. She saw his calloused hands, his tired face, the genuine steadiness in him, steady even though she had nearly broken his ribs with her accidental tumble. Finally, she nodded. Jeb pointed to the horses grazing near the corral. "You tell me where they went. We'll ride." She hesitated, wounded, alone, hunted. But she also understood she could not recover the sacred item alone. Trust was a fragile thing, yet she placed a shard of it in his hands. "They went north," she said. Jeb saddled the horses quickly despite the ache in his side. Before they rode out, he handed her the same little box she had sat on earlier. "Don't worry," he told her gently. "Whatever they took, we'll bring it back." For the first time since waking on his ranch, Nia allowed hope to touch her eyes. They rode north with urgency, racing through valleys, climbing narrow draws, following faint hoof tracks left by the outlaws. Nia held the reins tight but rode with an ease born of growing up in the open land. Her buckskin dress brushed the saddle horn, fringe fluttering with each stride. Her eyes searched the country as though she read stories in every stone and sage bush. Jeb watched her as they moved, quietly impressed. Even in exhaustion, she seemed part of the land. By late afternoon, smoke rose from a cluster of twisted pines. Nia stiffened instantly. Them. Jeb guided his horse behind a ridge so they could watch unseen. 3 men lounged around a fire. Scattered among their gear sat a wooden chest old enough to have lived generations. Nia gasped when she saw the carved symbols. "You trust me?" Jeb asked softly. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. That one word hardened his resolve. He handed her a spare revolver, not to push violence on her, but because she deserved the chance to defend what was hers. They crept down between brush and rocks. One outlaw wandered off to check the horses. Jeb and Nia moved then. Jeb lunged from behind a log, dragging one man down in a flurry of fists and dust. Nia darted for the chest. But the third outlaw grabbed her arm, snarling something cruel. She reacted fast, faster than fear, swinging the revolver's grip hard into his jaw. He dropped like a felled steer. The last outlaw charged Jeb. He rammed a fist into Jeb's injured ribs, nearly doubling him over. Pain lit Jeb's whole side, but he pushed past it, knocking the pistol away and tackling the man into the dirt. Minutes later, the men were tied and groaning. Nia knelt beside the chest, hands trembling as she touched the carved symbols, marks her ancestors had passed down. She whispered in Apache, a soft phrase Jeb didn't understand but felt in his bones. Inside the chest lay a wrapped bundle, old papers inked with generations of stories. "These are stories," she murmured, emotion thickening her voice. "All that is left of one family line." Jeb exhaled. "Then thank God we found them." They loaded the chest and rode back, slower this time, both bruised and tired. When the ridge of the ranch finally came into view, relief washed over them like cool rain. At the haystack, Nia paused. She looked at Jeb with a spark in her eyes. "You said, just sit on it." Jeb rubbed his ribs with a crooked grin. "Didn't think it would near break me." A soft laugh rose between them, light, welcome, and long overdue. For the first time since the raid, Nia felt something anchor inside her. Safety. Not the same as home, but something that could grow into it. And Jeb? He knew if she ever needed him again, he'd ride without a moment's hesitation. As the sun melted behind the hills, Nia placed the sacred bundle beside the small wooden box, pairing fear and rescue, past and future. Something new settled in her heart. Something like coming home.